It's a pleasure to have with us our friend, the former ambassador to Israel from the United States, David Friedman. David Friedman, the level of anti-Semitism and Israel hatred that we're seeing around the world and in this country, I've never seen anything like this. Certainly not in our lifetimes. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, Mark, thanks for having me. Yeah, it's a month ago I said it was the worst I've ever seen, and now, this month I would say it's even worse. It just keeps getting worse and worse. I don't see this trend stopping, and of course it's being advanced rapidly by the media. When the New York Times takes a kid with a congenital disease who looks sick and is sick and puts him on the front page and says that he's starving when the only reason that he looks that way is because of his disease. And then people see it, tens of millions of people see it and think that Israel is the cause of it when they're not. In fact, Israel treats these people, not only do they have starved them, they treat people with these types of diseases. So yeah, if you're an impressionable person and you see this and you're being told day and night by people who used to be considered, responsible journalists that Israel is, attacking civilians, then yeah, this is what happens, and it's all built on lies, but it's real. It's real, and it's as you saw today, the Canadians are recognizing a Palestinian state, along with the Brits and the French. What a betrayal! What a betrayal of Israel! If I can say, when you recognize a Palestinian state, which again it's meaningless because there's nothing to recognize. They don't have borders, they don't have a government, they don't have an economy, they don't have a justice system, they don't have anything except a terror network. But when you recognize them, what you're recognizing is the destruction of Israel. 3 countries, Canada, France, and the UK, that have sizable Jewish populations. These are places where Jews have lived for a century, where have participated in politics, participated in society. And now their governments are basically saying the one and only Jewish state in the world, we support its destruction through the establishment of a Palestinian terrorist state right on its border. That's what they're saying, and I've never seen anything like it.
And when Hamas sees this and hears this, as Hamas is starving its own people, like Mao starved his own people and Stalin starved his own people, because Hamas knows it cannot survive if it gives up the hostages, if the people there are actually fed and so forth. It is a truly monstrous terrorist organization. So when Hamas sees the UK Prime Minister, the President of France, when they say Canada, they see all these countries, they have absolutely no reason, do they, to enter into a proper ceasefire or to allow their people to be fed.
No, they're being rewarded for exactly the malign behavior which these countries claim that they'd like to stop, but they're actually rewarding and incentivizing this behavior. There were several, hostage families, over the last couple of days, who all want the war to end, who all want their families to be reunited, understandably so. They looked these leaders in the eye. They said to them, "You are making it harder for us to be reunited with our family. You are making it harder, not easier, for Hamas to have a reason to release the hostages." And it's absolutely true. Hamas is getting everything they want, without being asked to even make any concessions at all. And it's a terrible, terrible dynamic.
And look at the Democrat Party. Look who they've nominated in New York. Look at the leadership, how feckless it is. Look at a sizable percentage of that party, the officialdom in Washington and so forth, endorsing a Marxist, Islamist, anti-Semite. Look at the 40 Senate Democrats who wrote a letter to the Secretary of State and to Steve Witkoff, by the way, including liberal Jewish senators and so forth. These are very, very bad signs, are they not?
They are. They're really bad signs. New York City has the largest population of Jews in the world. There's more Jews in New York City than there are in Tel Aviv, more Jews in New York City than there are in Jerusalem. A city like New York, to have a likely mayor right now, he's certainly ahead in the polls, and everyone says he's likely to win, that this guy is even on the ballot when he is, a BDS supporting, Hamas supporting, anti-Israel, advocate, it's unthinkable. But you made a point subtly that I'll amplify, which is, look, we got 5 million Jews in this country. There's a couple of million of them that have their heads on backwards, and there are Jews out there who somehow think, and I guess this is a function of generations and generations of being brutalized by by anti-Semites over the past. They somehow think that if they agree with these bad guys, with these anti-Semites, that they somehow kind of capitulate and appease and say, we're with you, that life will get better for them, and it never does. It never does. It's a lesson that, unfortunately, we as a people learn the hard way. It's as you say, it's as disturbing a time that I've seen in my lifetime. I'm sort of happy that my parents are not alive to see this. I think it would have. I think having lived through that generation of the Holocaust, I don't think they could have handled it again. But we're in this very, very dangerous time, and we need people to stand up and to step up with courage against the mob, because that's what we're fighting. We're fighting a mob, right? You got to get up against the mob. It's not pleasant. It's not necessarily safe, but we have to do it. And it's thank God. I would just say, thank God we have Donald Trump. This guy has exceeded expectations for the Jewish people beyond. And I'm still very close to him, but I was working side by side with him for 4 years. I knew he had this in him, but until you're tested, you never know. Boy, did he as he performed, for Israel, in the defense of the Jewish people, and he's got guys like Leo Terrell, and Pam Bondi, and the ones that are taking on the universities. I mean, without him, as bad as it is, can you imagine without him where we would be? And unfortunately, we only get him for 3.5 years. So this is a disturbing time.
So, David Friedman, what about these narcissistic, self-described influencers who are out there challenging the Holocaust, trashing Churchill, treating Hitler as a victim, and now saying that various Jewish organizations run our foreign policy? Isn't this the basic anti-Semitic stuff?
It's right out of the playbook, and unfortunately, these people they're liars, they're ignorant, but they got a following, because there's the reality is that there are millions of people in our country. It's a small minority, but it's a big country, so even a small minority could be 5 to 10 million people, and they love this. They love this fomenting of anti-Semitism, and look, the people in the audience, they're not reading books. They're not, really getting into the facts. They're listening to these people, and they're getting angry because that's what their job is to, and it all really, the main argument that they make, which is the most, infuriating, is this whole argument that, that Israel's committing a genocide. That's where this thing always begins. It always begins, Israel's engaged in a genocide, and we should have no part of it. And of course, we should have no part in the genocide if there was one, but there isn't any. And, if you just look at basic statistics, when Israel took control over the Gaza Strip, there were 300,000 Palestinians living there. When it left the Gaza Strip, when it gave up control to the Palestinians, there was 1.5 million. So Israel, in its genocidal efforts, had the population of the Arab population grow fivefold. And then when they left, the population continued to grow. I mean, Israel is the most inept committer of genocide in history. I mean, so these things. These things are really hard to take. There's been a lot of work done. You know this as well as me about urban warfare and what's the appropriate level, if there's such a phrase, of civilian casualties. I mean, how do you know that the army is not really targeting civilians? And they have all these ratios, but Israel's ratio of civilian to military casualties in the war in Gaza is the lowest in recorded history in urban warfare. And that's not coming from me. That's coming from John Spencer, who leads the Urban Warfare Studies Department at West Point, at our U.S. Army academic institution. Nobody knows this. They won't mention any of those things. They won't mention, by the way, I'm involved, when I was ambassador, I was involved in Israel in a hospital called Save a Child's Heart. That was the name of the hospital. It's outside of Tel Aviv. And every day they would go to the Gaza Strip, and they would find, they would find children that need, sophisticated medical treatment that cannot be obtained in Gaza, and they would bring them in at their own expense to the hospital. They would treat them. I sat in on surgeries. I met with the families. They were so grateful that Israel was willing to do. Israel doesn't have to do this. They have no obligation to do this. They have no obligation to feed their enemies. They're accused of starving Palestinian children. They're bringing in meals that like it comes to like 8 meals a day for every person there, just in order to avoid the starvation. Is Hamas stealing the food? Is the United Nations inept in distributing it? Sure, but it's not Israel's fault. And I'll tell you one thing, Mark. I have my own podcast. I had Ron Dermer on this past week, and I asked him about starvation, and he said something to me which your audience should know, which is, without any pressure from the world, without any obligation to feed your enemy, which no country has an obligation to feed their enemy at war, but without any obligation, Israel on its own, without anybody encouraging it to do so, without anybody pressuring it to do so, would still do everything it can to feed the civilians that are in harm's way, because that's just the way Israel operates. And I've seen it over decades that that's the way Israel operates. But if you don't read a book and you don't do the work and you don't study and you just listen to these people on their shows and you listen to the lies, and you're already prone to an anti-Semitic narrative, these people have real reach and influence, and it's a shame, and I wish there was something we could do about it, but we have a First Amendment, and that sort of forecloses as much we can do about it, except take the opposite view and educate people about it.
And we need to condemn them. We need to shame them. We need to stop paying for their subscriptions. We need to stop giving them clicks and hits and all those things. Because what we find with these people is they attack Jews, but they also attack practicing Christians, and they also attack our own country, because this is antithetical for what this country stands for, no?
Yeah, and they're trying to drive, wedges between Israel and traditional allies. So, you mentioned the Christian community. The Christians in America, 60 million evangelical Christians, are Israel's best friend. So what do? They run these stories, completely false, about how Israel is not hospitable to people of the Christian faith. It's the only country in the Middle East which is hospitable to people of the Christian faith. There are ancient churches and holy places that Israel preserves with the same amount of care as it does the Jewish holy sites, but nobody cares. I mean, that's number one. Number two is to draw a wedge between President Trump and Israel. There's all these arguments that people, somehow, you heard this idiocy, about how everybody knows that Jeffrey Epstein is causing, even from the grave, Jeffrey Epstein is somehow causing Trump to do things, and that he's being controlled by the Mossad. I mean, this is just fantasy that people are. But you say it, and as a lie goes all the way around the world before the truth wakes up in the morning. And these lies are just out there and out there and out there, and they're popular, and they gain steam. And thank God for someone like you who's in a position to have the audience where you can set the record straight. But it's a daily grind.
Mm-hmm. Now, it is a daily grind, isn't it? Because the idea that the media are siding with Hamas, the idea that world leaders are siding with Hamas, the idea that Israel is expected to enter in a ceasefire, even if it means not getting their hostages back, that it's supposed to feed the citizenry that voted for Hamas, even though Hamas is really benefiting from this food, using it and selling it to make money in order to rearm itself. The idea that Hamas would survive after all of this is nuts, because Israel can't permit that. Moreover, Israel has been attacked when it took on Hezbollah. Israel has been attacked when it took on Iran. I feel like the world just wants Israel to make an agreement, go back into a huddle position, and if they get hit again, just, keep doing it like they used to do. And they said, we're not doing this anymore.
I think it might be worse. I think the world may just want Israel to go away. When Israel was able to kill Hassan Nasrallah, notwithstanding that he was the most protected human being in the Middle East, when they were able to kill Ismail Haniyeh when he was sitting in a dormitory in Tehran, in the most secure place in the country, when they were able to eliminate the Hezbollah high echelon with the exploding pagers, when they were able to fly over Iranian airspace, like they were, JetBlue flying into Fort Lauderdale, absolutely take out all the air defenses, this disturbs people. This is something people are uncomfortable. And Netanyahu has said this many times. The world is uncomfortable with Jewish power. The world is comfortable with dead Jews. There's been books, the world loves dead Jews. My father used to say, the world loves dead Jews. Powerful Jews is something the world hasn't gotten used to, and they never will. And so, in the aftermath of Israel's successes against the most ruthless, the most evil enemies on the planet, a lot of Israel's enemies, they don't want an agreement. They want them to be gone. They're uncomfortable that Israel has this much, this capacity for self-defense and this ability to do things that, frankly, with the possible exception of our country, no other country can do. And it's just in the water. I'm not sure what there is to do about it. But at the end of the day, the Jewish people would rather be alive and disliked than popular and dead. And that's just the calculus. If that has to be the calculus, that's the calculus.
Mm-hmm. And yet Israel's in one of the strongest positions it's ever been in as a result of the way it has fought this war, the way it has destroyed or nearly destroyed Iran's proxies, the terrorists that surround them. They're there. They're always going to be there, but in one form or another. And the way Israel and the United States have worked together to deal with Iran. Israel's never been in a more important, powerful, secure position, no?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you could argue that Israel is not just a regional superpower at this point. You could argue that Israel is actually a superpower based upon its capacity to defend itself and its capacity to export the sort of assets that frankly nobody else has. And that's the quandary, meaning Israel, because Israel is so strong, the hatred towards Israel has grown proportionally. That's one of the main reasons why I think we have so much anti-Semitism, because people are just uncomfortable with Israel's strength and power. But those people who say, why is America supporting Israel? What are they getting out of it? Boy, I think that answer has now been foreclosed. When I was the ambassador and I had access to all kinds of stuff that people didn't know about, I knew as a fact that Israel did things that kept Americans safe, on their shores. That Israel actually helps to protect Americans at home. But now, you look, for example, at the weaponry that America has sold to Israel. Israel takes this weaponry. Now, they're the only ones who are using it every day. They're fighting every day. They're flying these planes around every day, and they're making changes. And the only other country that has access to these changes to Israel, to this equipment, is the United States. So, it's almost like, Israel's a test lab for American weaponry. And when they share that, that technology that they develop in real time under real fighting conditions, it makes America safer. There's lots of reasons why America should support Israel apart from, the shared values and the Judeo-Christian alliance. Just real politics, is it good for Israel in America to be aligned? It sure is, and President Trump knows that well. But nobody, that's not going to win the day, because the people that want to drive a wedge between America and Israel, and the people who hate Israel, just hate Israel because Israel because it exists, because it's strong, because it's independent, and it makes them uncomfortable. And you know what? They're just going to have to get over it, because Israel's not going away.
All right, my friend. Well, I appreciate your service to our country, your service to President Trump all these years, and your voice out there. It's very, very important. David Friedman. By the way, people want to read, because you blog a lot, you put things out there and so forth, or otherwise want to contact you if you want them to. Where do they go?
Well, it's at David M _Friedman, Friedman. And they could also look at onejewishstate.net. One Jewish State is our foundation. We believe that the Palestinians should have a better life, but they should have a better life under the sovereignty of the State of Israel. The State of Israel is the only sovereign in the region that has the capacity to secure everyone and to bring everybody up to the best standard of living.
All right, my friend. Have a wonderful evening. Thanks again, man. Appreciate you.
Well, thanks, Mark. Thanks, man. Thank you, my friend. Bye-bye.
All right, you be well. He's a good man. Great American.